Hi guys, it's Norman Sullivan from Higher Ground Lifestyle here. Slightly different format for the video today because I want to talk to you about options for how you configure your camper van. It's an extremely important part of the design process and so many people really don't think about it. They go straight to the default, which is, I'm going to fit a rock and roll bed. And in actual fact, there are many alternative options that might suit you. I've listed just some of the main options that I've looked at. A centre lounge option, a U-shaped lounge option with seating at the back, a split rear lounge with seats down either side, or an L shape. So let's talk about some of these options and see if they ring true with you and your thoughts on your camper van. This was the first option that I looked at, which is the conventional rock and roll bed option. And in all these different images, the top image is the day configuration, if you like, and the bottom image is the night configuration. And I've looked at the strengths and the weaknesses from my perspective, from our perspective, my wife and myself. So obviously this is the conventional option. It's the accepted configuration. When people open the doors on a T5 conversion, this is what they expect to see. Probably with a full side conversion and the rock and roll bed at the back. It's got obviously a lot of travel seats, and that's the real advantage with the rock and roll beds. They have travel seats, and the same is true for rib beds. I'm using the term rock and roll bed here, but the same is true for the rib beds. If you need travel seats, this really is the only way to go. But what I didn't like about this is where the seats are located. The travel seats are right at the back. It's not where I would want to travel in a van. And when you do stop, you've got a situation where you've got 2 or 3 seats facing another 2 or 3 seats. It's a pretty kind of confrontational type arrangement, and it just didn't feel sociable. Our van will be used really only by myself and Sheena, my wife, and we wanted something that felt a little bit more sociable. And the rock and roll bed for us just didn't work, and we didn't need those travel seats. So we started to look at some other options. This was a kind of step back from the rock and roll bed. This was where we really just used a futon bed and saved a bit of money, because obviously a rock and roll bed's pretty expensive, £2,500 upwards. And we thought, well, one of the options might be to put a futon bed in it, fold it out when we needed it at night, and the understanding that we could always add a rock and roll bed at a later stage. So it deferred us making any significant expenditure. Then we looked at maybe a rear kitchen option. The advantage of that, we thought, was it pulls the rock and roll bed forward, and it also allowed us to have some twin seats at the front that could rotate around. So we had almost more of a kind of conventional living room type feel, a less confrontational feel. Everybody looking into the middle of the space in the van. Disadvantage is we felt it was less conventional. There was less access to the storage space, and in particular, you'd have to go outside to cook on the kitchen. It's quite a popular model, but it tends to be more popular in countries where the weather is good. And I really didn't fancy having to go outside to make a cup of coffee in the pouring rain, which was why we were looking at, could we do it in such a way that we would always have space on the inside to get to the cooker? And we thought it would probably be problematic. So then we started to look at rear lounge type configurations, and the first one that we looked at was what we called the U-shaped lounge, and we quite liked that because we thought, well, that's a very sociable configuration. You could have 3 or 4 people potentially comfortably sitting around a central table and having a conversation. We thought this was very much like the kind of caravans that we used to go on childhood holidays in. It's a good day configuration. It creates a very large bed when you fold it down at night. There's lots of storage under the seats, and you potentially have the option to have that as 2 singles or a double. The main weaknesses, obviously, because you don't have the rock and roll bed, you've only got 2 or 3 travel seats, depending on whether or not you've got a double at the front or a single. And we also thought in this configuration, you end up with very limited kitchen space, and really, you're probably down to a single burner, and it's pretty small. And the other thing we thought, in our combi van, which didn't have rear windows in it and didn't even have windows in the rear door, we thought it might be a bit dark in the back. We might need to put some windows into the van to make this configuration work. This was a kind of another version of this, but where we didn't completely U, and we called this a kind of split lounge. So we had seats running down the back, almost old-fashioned transit van-like, and it converted in the middle using a table or a fold-down bed. Again, we thought this was a good day configuration, and the advantage of this over the U-shaped lounge was you had the ability for what we classed that front-to-back pass-through possible. And I suppose the other thing, although I didn't admit it to Sheena at the time, I also quite liked the fact that in this one, I could actually still use the van as a van for carrying big sheets of plywood and plasterboard and different things simply by taking the middle table out, which I couldn't do in the U-shaped conversion. Same thing again, we thought it would probably need windows to really work, and we were very concerned about how much kitchen space we could actually have in this. Another iteration of that, so in this iteration, we increased the size of the kitchen. So you end up with this kind of lopsided configuration with a longer seat on one side than the other, but still a very sociable seating arrangement. And this, we thought, we're actually getting into a really good place here. And that seemed to work very well. And you could still rotate the front seats, and you could actually create an even more open living space, and a table that maybe up to 3 or 4 people even could sit around and actually, if not eat a meal, certainly drink coffee. We then looked at an L-shaped lounge, and we thought it kind of doesn't really work. There's a lot of wasted space in this configuration. The challenge comes when you're trying to convert this from being a seating area into a bedded area. You just end up with some space. But in actual fact, it still works, and we did quite like it. Limited access to the kitchen at night, but yeah, it was another option, we thought. Then we started to try and do some stuff that really just didn't work at all. So we did a few configurations where we tried to, again, optimize that sociable area at the rear, but still have access to a kitchen. So we tried to bring the kitchen forward, and we just didn't think that worked on any basis, really. It looks great on a plan, but when you actually go and pace it out in the van, it just doesn't fit. It just doesn't fit at all. And we did a split version of that as well. Same issues. It just doesn't split. And the whole front and rear of the van is completely separate, and you can't turn the seats around. So it just didn't make the cut. We did an L-shaped lounge, which you thought maybe worked a little bit or had more possibility to work, but the kitchen was in the same place. It still really didn't work at all, really. This was actually a configuration that was based on a Ford Transit Nugget that we went to look at. And it looks crazy, but the Ford Transit Nugget has a fantastic configuration. And it uses the 2 front seats, it uses the 2 second row seats to convert into a bed that extends out under the kitchen area at the back. So you've almost got a completely separate lounge area at the front through the day and kitchen area at the back through the day. And then at night, you've got a bedroom area at the front and a kitchen area at the back. And they even managed to squeeze a fixed toilet in that rear quarter. And it really is worth having a look at if you get the chance. But we thought it would require an awful lot of work, and it was very complicated, and we thought it would probably require some kind of very fancy bespoke bed solution. And because these were also travel seats, we thought that's really too complicated. But again, I would encourage you, if you haven't, go and have a look at a Ford Nugget. They are very, very clever. So what won out for us? Well, this is what won out for us. This, what we call the kind of modified rear lounge. We liked that optimal configuration through the day. The fact that it easily converted into a large bed in a very conventional way by either folding over or by using a table with an infill cushion. There's lots and lots of storage under the seats, and we also recognised that there was an off-the-shelf option. Van Furniture, who are the company that we eventually decided to go with, sell this exact configuration. And I didn't know that when we were doing all this design work, but they had actually already done it and designed it. And the other thing is, when we looked at the costs of this, we realised that we could do our entire internal conversion here, including our cooking area, our storage area, our sink and all of our beds, including all of the upholstery, for less than the price of a decent rock and roll bed, and certainly considerably less than the cost of a rib bed. So that just seemed to tick all of our boxes. The weaknesses, only 2 to 3 travel seats. As I've already said, that's not a problem for us, but it will be a problem for many. It's less conventional. It's not everybody's cup of tea. There are limited unit space, although there's loads and loads of space under the seats. And we definitely thought to make this work, we would probably want to put some rear windows, certainly into the rear door of our van, and maybe even into the rear quarter. One of the things that really, really sold us on this was an image that appeared on a Facebook page. That's actually the van furniture design of the unit, and you can see how it fits in. We were a little bit concerned when we looked at the plan of how much, because our van's only a short wheelbase, how much that unit on the right hand side there extends past the door. In reality, in operation, you don't notice it, and you've actually got access to the cupboard space from outside as well, which is quite handy. The other thing I'm showing on this, the blue rectangles there, are the freestanding table that we wanted. We didn't like the conventional table used with a rock and roll bed that attaches on the end of a unit. And again, one of the things we saw as a downside with a rock and roll bed is that you end up with somebody sitting in the rock and roll bed using a fold out table and somebody else sitting in the seat at the front using a completely separate table. We just didn't like that. So we wanted a freestanding table in the middle of the van that anybody sitting on any of those sides could actually use and socialise around. This was the image that we saw that kind of made us think, yeah, I really like that. It just ticked all our boxes. And it also was the image that said, you know, I've got to put rear windows in this van. We didn't have any windows at all. So on the back of this image, I immediately put rear windows in our barn doors. But we then went on and we decided to put windows in the rear quarter as well. And this is our van during construction, and you can see the difference. Not a very nice day there, but adding the windows all around has made that a really nice, light and airy, sociable kitchen space. We've changed the style of the table base. We've gone for a flush mounting table base, which is actually in a hole through the floor. And what that means is when you lift the table out, there's nothing to get in your way as you move about. And you can comfortably fit 2 or 3 people down the right hand side there, one person at the back and one person on the other side. So, you know, comfortably 3 or 4 people can actually sit around that table and socialise. And also, we've gone with twin single factory rotating seats, so you can also have another couple of people sitting in the front. So it's quite a nice van for socialising in, even although only 2 or 3 of us can actually travel in it. So that was what we've gone with. And when you compare those 2 images, the first one that was kind of a bit of our inspiration and where we got to at the time of filming this video, I'm very happy with the way that things have gone. So, in summary, some final thoughts for you. I think it's really important to be clear on what it is you actually want from your van before you start spending money and going and buying things. Do your research. There's lots and lots of stuff out there, and once you've done your research, go and do some more research. Lots of brilliant projects, lots and lots of people who've done this any number of times, and lots of pictures and images for you to pull together and see what really inspires you. Yeah, absolutely. If you need travel seats, if you've maybe got a couple of kids, you're going to have to go with a rock and roll bed, or even better if you can afford a rib bed. But if you don't need that, there are lots of alternatives. It's your van. Plan it for your use. One of the things that initially really worried us, we thought, oh gosh, if we go for something that's a little bit different, will people not want to buy our van? If we're only going to have 2 or 3 travel seats, will that put people off when we come to sell this van? And do you know what we said? We said we're not building this van for anybody else. We're building it for ourselves. Let's not compromise. Let's get what we want. And that was, I think, another really important thing. Let's get what we want. It's been really fun doing this, and it's actually a project that Sìne has really engaged in. She doesn't always engage in my projects, but this one, we've talked through the different options, we've run over designs, and then she got really interested as we started to talk about different fabrics and cushions and finishes and layouts and configurations. So It's something that's really nice to do together. But something else that's also very important, and I'm so glad I've done this. When you're looking at all these images and you're getting all these brilliant ideas and you're starting to draw your designs up, it's really important to keep going back and looking at your van. And the reason that's important is to remind yourself just how small they are. It's very easy to look at some wonderful pictures of T5 and T6 vans in Californias and think, oh, we could do so much with this. And what most of these pictures don't have in them are people. Because as soon as you put a person in these images, you realize that the work surface that you're looking at is not like the work surface in your kitchen. This is not something you're going to stand up and cook at. This is something, at best, you're going to sit down and cook at. And even if you've got a pop top, it's small. So and I mean, when I was doing some of these designs, I was thinking, oh, this is fantastic. This is great. I've done something totally unique here. Nobody's ever done this before. This could be really big. And then you go out and you plot it in your van and you think, oh my goodness me, it could never fit. So don't forget the van and the whole thing. And one final thing, once you've got a plan, stick to it. I've seen so many projects, vans and many other things, that have gone askew when people have had an idea and then they've changed their mind halfway through. So that's another good reason to do your research and then do your research again. But you know what, guys? It's really great fun. Thanks so much for listening. I know this has been a slightly different kind of a video. Lots and lots of options out there. If you're enjoying this series, please like us, please follow us. We don't get paid for it, but it helps. It's encouraging if people like the videos and have some positive comments. But we also like some comments if they're constructive as well. Guys, stay safe, enjoy your projects, and keep tuning in to Higher Ground Lifestyle.